Hello, good evening, and welcome to this edition of Dear Old State Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. My name is Jack Rachinsky alongside Adriana Gucci, here to bring you all the latest from across the Happy Valley sports world.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, and I'm not talking about the holiday season just yet. It's because there is just so much to talk about in Penn State athletics. From a court storm in the BJC and hockey conference play to women's volleyball national title push and the college football playoff right around the corner, our beat reporters look to bring you up to speed on it all. It's time for the Dear Old State Update.
Let's do it. Well, the long wait is over. The first edition of the expanded college football playoff is here. After their first 11-win regular season since 2008 and a loss to number 1 Oregon in the Big Ten title game, the Nittany Lions slotted into the 6th seed, where they will host the SMU Mustangs, who fell to Clemson in the ACC championship game. I'm joined by Sports Night football reporter Jenna Wisman to talk about how the Nittany Lions stack up in their first CFP appearance. So, Jenna, a 45-37 loss to the number 1 team in the country. What are some of your thoughts and your takeaways from the game?
Yeah, so, as a fan, you never want to see your team lose. But I think on Saturday, I was excited when Penn State lost. And not because they lost the Big Ten championship, but because of how they lost. I was so impressed by Penn State's offense and what they were able to do, especially against the number 1 team in the country. I need to stress that because I feel like people are forgetting that about Oregon. But overall, I was really impressed with Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, the 2 running backs. Katron Allen had 124 yards. That's his best of the season. And then Nick Singleton had 116 yards and a touchdown. So very happy with their play. Whenever the score was 28-10 in the second quarter, I thought this game might be over. You never know. But they were able to bounce back. And I think that just goes to show the grit that this Penn State team has this year, how they're different. And also Drew Aller, he's looking really good as well. He looks more comfortable in his spot. When it comes to Oregon, I think the issue came down to wide receivers. You look at them, they're able to run all over Penn State's defense. They could do that to any defense, honestly. I think Penn State's defense is still really good. And I do have a good feeling going into the college football playoff.
Yeah, Oregon is the only undefeated team left in the FBS. Tez Johnson, the most receiving yards by any wide receiver in a Big Ten championship game. But let's go from last week to the future with the college football playoff. Penn State hosting SMU in Beaver Stadium in the first round. And despite their 6th seed slot, Penn State's got a pretty favorable path.
Yeah, they do have a really favorable path. So I immediately thought it was going to be Alabama. But then when I saw SMU pop up on the screen, I was excited because I think that Penn State has a better shot against SMU than they would if Alabama was the team they were playing at Beaver Stadium. I think it comes down to like the name type of thing. With Ohio State, I think they could have beat Ohio State, but it's the name. So with Bama, I thought the same thing kind of. So now that it's SMU, I'm really interested to see how it's going to go. SMU is a good team. And so I think, like I said, Drew Aller settling in. And so I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, and let's go towards that game against the Mustangs. They lost on a last-second 56-yard field goal in the ACC championship game at Clemson. What are your first impressions about the squad?
Yeah, I think the squad, you can't take them lightly. I think they're a really good team. When you look at their offense and you look at their defense is explosive. And Penn State can't do what they did against Bowling Green or Kent State at the beginning. They took them lightly, and I don't think they can do that again. You got to know this team could come in here. They want to win. You're in Beaver Stadium. And I think, you just need to play hard and need to play tough. The weather is going to be a huge part of the game, and so is just the environment in Beaver Stadium in general. So I'm excited to see SMU come to Penn State.
Well, Penn State will clash with the Mustangs for the 3rd time in program history on Saturday, December 21st at noon, with the Nittany Lions also calling for whiteout conditions. The winner will take on Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl in the CFP quarterfinals. Adriana, back to you.
Thanks, Jack. Penn State men's basketball is off to an 8-1 start. Today, the team received 90 votes in the AP poll and sits as the 30th best team in the country. Last Thursday, the Nittany Lions pulled off an upset against number 8 Purdue. Our Amanda Vogt was on the scene.
There's something about snow that correlates to court storms for Penn State. Last season, it was number 11 Wisconsin that fell. And on Thursday, after December 4th snowfall, it was the number 8 Purdue Boilermakers that became the Nittany Lions' latest victim.
If we were in the front line of a war just now, we'd all be dead. Our fight wasn't even close to Penn State's fight. It wasn't even close, remotely close.
Penn State defeated Purdue 81-70 in a Big Ten opener. It was the Nittany Lions' first top 10 win since 2019 and only the second time they've beaten the Boilermakers since 2014. The Penn State defense was the catalyst for its success. It forced 24 turnovers, a season high, and the most by Purdue since 2005.
That's just our style of play, and that's what we pride ourselves on, is creating turnovers, and it's nice when we see it pay off like that.
With the 14 turnovers the Nittany Lions forced in the first half, Mike Rhodes said that was the best first half of defense he's seen since he became the head coach at the start of last season.
We say deny, disrupt with great discipline. I just thought we did that a lot today, and that was huge. And we had to set the tone with our defense and our disruption, because if we didn't, they will set the pace of the game, and they're really good at that.
Offensively, Ace Baldwin Jr. and Freddie DeLeon V led the team in points with 17 and 14 points respectively. Up next, Penn State will head to Piscataway, New Jersey to face Rutgers on December 10th. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Amanda Vogt.
In the latest AP Top 25 poll, Purdue dropped 3 spots to number 11, and Penn State is receiving votes. Regardless of the standings, the Nittany Lions put the rest of the conference on watch at the start of Big Ten competition. Now, Maya, what has impressed you the most?
It's been 2 things so far. It has been Penn State's mentality and their ability to pass the ball. Coach Rhodes has instilled this never stop fighting mentality in these players, and I think it is really starting to pay off. And I also think that's what happened in this Purdue game. Both Rhodes and players have said that if they're able to get their opponent to some level of fatigue, that is when they pick up their momentum, and that's when they're able to capitalize on scoring points. And so I believe that is what happened in this Purdue game, and I'm excited to see that mentality continue in the season. As for passing the ball, Ace Baldwin Jr. typically leads Penn State in putting up points, and Purdue knew that. So they were all over him, and it was a slower start for him. So his teammates were able to pick that up. So we saw outstanding performances from Puff Johnson, Freddie DeLeon, Nick Kern, and Zach Hicks. So they all picked up the slack, and they were able to really prove themselves on the court and secure the win for Penn State.
Yeah, and it's the way that mentality has been bought in so quickly, considering how many freshmen and transfers were brought into this roster. Now, Purdue is not the same team that made it all the way to the NCAA tournament final at the end of March Madness and lost. A lot of changes to their roster, but you cannot ignore the leap that this program has taken in the year 2 of the Mike Rhodes era. And you could see it with the way that the BJC has started to pack. Only 1 conference game under their belt, but still good attendance sizes for those non-conference games. And Mike Rhodes even created this new mantra. It already has been on a t-shirt, sweat with us. That's what he wants from the fans that show up. How have you seen the attendance numbers so far?
Yeah, I mean, we were there when Rhodes initially challenged the fans and challenged the students to get up on their feet, be loud in the BJC, go against that stereotype that the BJC is quiet during basketball games, and sweat with the team. And I have not only seen it impact the fan environment positively, but also on the team. We had Freddie DeLeon in media quoting "Sweat with us" to really instill that Rhodes mentality into the fans. So I think it's been a great thing all around, and I'm excited to see how that carries out in the future.
Yeah, Penn State fans stormed the court after upsetting Purdue, and nearly 9,000 people were in attendance for that matchup. And you see Mike Rhodes all the time just hyping up the crowd, being very animated as a coach, brings great energy not only to the people on the court, but for the spectators watching. But now Penn State will have its first true road test, an area where last year the team was very shaky, only winning 2 of their 10 road contests.
One of them happened to be against the Scarlet Knights, their first time defeating Rutgers at home since 2019. Maya, do you think they can do it again?
I think it's very possible. They're coming off of a very dominant win over Purdue, and Rutgers is coming off of their first conference loss.
Yep.
However, Rutgers is not a team to be overlooked. This season has been highly anticipated for them. They were in the AP preseason top 25 poll, and their 2024 draft picks were some of the best in the country, with all-American players, both Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, sorry, excuse me. But those are definitely two players to look out for on the court. So it will be a good game, and Penn State will have to fight for that win.
Yeah, obviously Penn State's relying on their veteran Ace Baldwin, whereas Rutgers has newcomer Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, those top 5 recruits, which not many people expected Rutgers to snag, but they did. And obviously, there's still a transition period to get acclimated into the system that the Scarlet Knights have instilled, but they have dropped 4 of their last 5, 3 straight, lost by 14 on the road to Ohio State, but now they'll have that Big Ten home matchup, expecting a pretty large crowd, considering especially how Penn State fans travel, not only for football, but for all of the other sports as well. So Penn State will have a road test. It'll be interesting to see how Mike Rhoades handles the situation, but they did play some away games. They just counted as neutral sites in their Thanksgiving week tournament down in Daytona, where they narrowly lost to Clemson, but put up a good fight nonetheless. But considering the start that Penn State is on, it will be exciting to see how they continue to play. The Nittany Lions will take on the Scarlet Knights tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the Jersey Mike's Arena. Now we head over to Adriana, who was at Rec Hall as Penn State Wrestling opened its new season.
Thanks, Amanda and Maya. The defending national champions Penn State Wrestling hosted Drexel in its season opening duel. I was on site a few weeks ago. Let's take a look. Dominant, the word to describe Penn State Wrestling. The 13-time national champions opened their season this past weekend against the Drexel Dragons in front of 6,000. Before the duel, Penn State raised its 2024 national champion banner in a packed Rec Hall. 2 true freshmen made their debuts, Luke Lillidahl at 125, who picked up a victory in forfeit, and Kale Nasdeo at 141, who dropped an 11-8 decision. Big Ten champion Braden Davis, who moved up to 133, secured a 7-5 win in his first duel out as a sophomore. Connor Pierce and Alex Facundo also competed and both earned wins to put Penn State up 15-3 at halftime. Then, it was time for Penn State's big dogs to come out and play. Penn State showcased its death row of wrestlers with the likes of Levi Haynes, Carter Starachi, and Greg Kirkfleet, who capped things off here at Rec Hall with a pin. Mitchell Messenbrink, Lucas Cochran, Levi Haynes, Carter Starachi, and Greg Kirkfleet all defeated their opponents to finish up a 41-3 Penn State win.
Our whole team is pretty solid all the way up through, and I just feel like as the season goes on, we're going to keep getting better, so that's going to be the exciting part.
The Nittany Lions will be back in action on November 24th at the Army Black Knight Invitational in West Point, New York. The Nittany Lions went on the road this past weekend and took down Lehigh to improve to 2-0 this year. They'll be back in action on Sunday against Wyoming. And now to another team that calls Rec Hall home. After another dominant regular season, the Penn State women's volleyball team finds itself in the postseason once again. The team hosted the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament play and are set to host regional action this week. We now bring in our women's volleyball beat reporter, Ethan Ellis. Ethan, the team had a very successful 2-game stint this weekend with wins over Delaware State and North Carolina. What does the squad need to do to keep that momentum rolling?
Right. So you mentioned momentum, and I think the biggest place they have that momentum right now is offensively. We've talked about the duo of Jess Merzick and Cameron Hanna ad nauseum this year, but they're once again showing up for the Nittany Lions in this postseason. Cameron Hanna against Delaware State hit .550. Jess Merzick against UNC, 21 kills. I mean, this duo has been playing out of their mind in the postseason, and this team is going to continue to rely on them as this postseason goes on. They've faced some of the lower teams starting off, but they've already got a lot of experience against these top 10 teams. You think Pitt, Nebraska, Wisconsin, they already have a lot of a lot of experience, and this is a really seasoned team that has a chance to make a deep run. But keeping that offensive momentum going, feeding the ball to Cameron Hanna and Jess Merzick. And one person that's doing a great job of that, Izzy Stark, the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. She's been tallying up her assists time after time, and that's been huge in getting, like I said, Jess Merzick and Cameron Hanna the ball.
Yeah, Ethan, and Penn State will play Marquette, and that winner will face the winner of Creighton and Texas. Who are some players that need to really step up and take the handle on this whole thing as we wind down the number of teams?
Right. Well, in addition to those offensive players I mentioned, because they'll be huge against Marquette, Jillian Grimes is going to be another really key factor. I mean, this Marquette team, they're hitting close to Penn State in terms of hitting percentage. They're a pretty good offense, and they're going to be tough to stop. And I think Jillian Grimes, she's going to be the biggest factor in this. 14 digs against UNC, I believe it was. She is the heart and soul of this defense, really, and she's the one that's stopping these teams from scoring a ton of points. I mean, Delaware State, they were held to 4 points in one set. Jillian Grimes, huge part in that, and she's going to play a huge part down the road.
Yeah, your libero has to be super important towards the back of the court, and Jillian Grimes has done a great job for Penn State this year. While there's still a long road for the finals in Louisville, the Nittany Lions are on a roll, only losing one set in their first 2 games of the postseason. Stay tuned, because after the break, we'll have a look at the men and women's hockey squads for Penn State.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.
Live from the campus of Penn State University, this is PSN News.
Penn State Network News is a student-produced, bi-weekly live news show featuring all student talent.
From local and national news to sports, entertainment, weather, and live interviews, we have it all.
We also feature student-made packages from across campus.
Airing every Monday and Wednesday at 7 p.m.
We are PSN News.
Be sure to check us out on Twitter and Facebook at PSN News, on Instagram at Penn State Network News, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/PSN News.
Have a good night and stay safe, Penn State. Hey everyone, we are Red Carpet News, your main source of entertainment news at Penn State University.
Man, this festival is going to be popping.
I'm Alex Porzillo, here with Aiden Harold.
He's going to 23rd with Daddy Elon Warbucks to actual space away from Kim.
So insane, especially during Kendrick's part when they came out.
Reporting on anything from music, movies, TV shows, fashion, to celebrity gossip. You don't want to miss out on any of the hot topics we discuss.
Find our segments on YouTube under the name Red Carpet News for your daily dose of entertainment.
We are Red Carpet News.
Hello, and welcome back to Dear Old State Update. The weather and the ice is frigid, but the action for Penn State women's hockey is heating up as we get into the thick of conference play. Women's hockey beat reporter Josh Bartosik is with us now to talk about the Nittany Lions season so far. So, Josh, Penn State sits on a 15-4 record, undefeated in conference play, and a big part of that is, of course, the pride of Elk River, Minnesota, number 26, Maddie Christian.
Yeah, she's been fantastic this season, something that I don't think maybe a whole lot of people expected coming in. You look at what she's done so far, 14 goals, nearly triple the amount that she has in her career high, which was 5. In terms of points, 10 more than her career high, which happened last year in 11. So she's really blossomed so far. Now has moved from a bottom 6 role from last year into a top 6 role for Jeff Campersol's squad, and has really, really flourished there. Alongside her, who else but Tessa Janicki doing Tessa Janicki things? 31 points, averaging over 1.5 points per game so far on the season for Penn State. And you have to also mention the fact that the goaltending has been really solid. They lost their starting goaltender last year. She transferred. We'll talk about her a little bit later. But Katie Disa was someone that came in, had a great CHA tournament for Penn State, proved that last year wasn't a fluke. And so for Penn State so far, it's more of the same and more of what's expected from Jeff Campersol's squad so far. They're back-to-back CHA champions now in the AHA. exact same teams, different conference name, excuse me. They want the exact same thing. You want to go for that three-peat, find a way to get back into the NCAA tournament because it's going to be very tough for Penn State if they don't win the AHA outright in the conference championship to make it into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, all of it is so important, especially in this conference. But it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows for the Nittany Lions. They've struggled on the power play. Some of their non-conference losses a bit shaky, especially that play down in Nashville. What are some of your thoughts on that? How can they rebound?
Yeah, you mentioned it's a good thing you mentioned that series in Nashville or that tournament showcase in Nashville because Penn State is a team that normally prides itself so far on playing tougher non-conference opponents because in the grand scheme of things, the AHA is considered one of the weaker, if not the weakest, women's conference in college hockey. And for Penn State to lose to teams like Merrimack and Stonehill, well, they tied Stonehill. Technically, they won in the shootout, but in their minds, it really goes down as a loss because those are two teams that you absolutely have to beat when it comes to non-conference play. They're two of the weaker teams in terms of non-conference. Luckily for Penn State, they didn't necessarily lose too much spots in their rankings. They finished they still stayed at number 12 in the rankings, but it definitely took them a dip. It gave them a bit of a dip, and it also helped them realize that they are not as strong of a team as they were last year, or at least not as mentally tough as they think they were from last year to this year. This is a team that did really, really well in non-conference play last year. They're still doing decent besides those two games, have a win over a ranked team in UConn near the beginning of the season and a sweep over Dartmouth as well. But this is still a Penn State team that when it comes down to it, you expect more from the non-conference play. And the majority of those reasons and the reason that they're failing in those situations is because of the power play so far. They haven't scored a power play goal in 6 games. It's been a huge talking point the entire season. They've tried multiple different units, multiple different structures and systems to try and get it figured out, and they just can't. It's just hovering right now around 19.8%, but no power play goals in 6 straight games. Something's got to change for the second half of the season.
And they will have a chance to rectify that in the new year. They play both Minnesota and Bemidji State in the East-West Showcase. And the Beavers do an old friend for Penn State as well.
They do. We mentioned her a little bit earlier, but Josie Bothan, really you could call her technically a Penn State legend, holds almost every single record in terms of goaltending for the Nittany Lions. Transferred last year, suffered a season-ending injury in a series against Syracuse, missed the CHA tournament. Luckily for Penn State, Kitty Dietz stepped in and helped continue that for Penn State. But you look at that record for the Beavers, it's not great. 3-12-1. You really think overall that, hey, this is probably a series that Penn State should ultimately come out, or a game that they should come out on top in. But you have to remember, this is a Beavers team that's playing in the toughest women's hockey conference in the entire nation. The WCHA has perennial national title contenders. Minnesota, a team that they're going to play later down the road. Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Duluth, all these fantastic teams all play in the same conference. Bemidji is a team that's still trying to figure out themselves identity-wise, and so that's why the record looks so down so far. But this is still a team that can get things done. They have a couple of decent wins. Those 3 wins have been pretty solid for them. So for Penn State, you can't take that opponent lightly, but it's definitely a game that you think that they should win. And you look at this Minnesota team, what more can you say about them? Number 3 in the nation, a team that has been perennial Frozen Four title contenders, perennial National Cup title contenders. They have been fantastic year in and year out. They're led by Abby Murphy, one of the best forwards in the entirety of not just women's college hockey, but I think the entirety of college hockey. She's going to make a name for herself playing professionally, playing in the Olympics. She's been fantastic. So for Penn State, it's going to come down to that game against Minnesota as well. Can you prove that you are a team that deserves to be in the conversation for the national championship? Or is it going to be more of the same where you beat up on the weaker opponents if you're Penn State, but once you get to those tougher opponents, you can't necessarily get that final push to get over the edge. So that's going to be a game to really watch out for, especially with the problems we've seen in the first half of the season.
It's going to be very interesting next month in the Twin Cities. The Nittany Lions play against the Golden Gophers on Friday, January 3rd at 2 p.m. in Minneapolis. But for now, let's throw it to Anthony Descher and Cassie Vaselis to talk about Penn State men's hockey.
Thanks, guys. Penn State men's hockey has been on a bit of a skid recently, struggling against conference foes. With the team nearly at the halfway point of the season, there's a lot to look at. I'm Anthony Descher, joined alongside Cassie Vaselis, and we are your Penn State men's hockey beat reporters. Cassie, the team has been struggling as of late, more specifically against conference foes, struggling to get in the win column. What have you seen from the team that is wrong?
Yeah, I mean, this team, they have a lot of great components that could really make for a great season. So it's unfortunate when you kind of look at where they're at right now, but as you can see on this graphic, they are 0-8 in conference play. That is not ideal. These are games that, they need to be winning. And if you kind of look game by game, how it's going, there's kind of a bit of a pattern. We saw it against Ohio State in the second game where they let in a few goals at the start, then they make a comeback, tie it up, and then they end up falling. because they are not capitalizing. So it's very important for them to capitalize at the end to be able to get these wins. They're 1-6-0 when they let in that first goal. That's obviously not ideal. They definitely want to switch that up. But it's a bit of a ping pong ball on how the game's going to go. You know, when the goaltending and the defense is looking good, maybe the offense is not. When the offense is producing, maybe the goaltending and the defense isn't looking so great. And then also, if you tie in penalties in there, that can totally switch up how the game is going to go.
Oh, exactly. This team starting 0-8 is not good. This is their worst start to conference play in the history of their program. Against Ohio State, they just took too many penalties, and it's so hard to win a game when you're in the penalty box for 6, 7, 8 minutes per game. And this team is young. This team is scrappy. I mean, you would think this team, if they can get it together, they are still looking to host a home series in Pagula Ice Arena during the Big Ten tournament. I mean, you see a couple of these games sprinkled throughout, a 1-0 loss, an overtime loss, even a 10-6 loss. It was close at times against Ohio State as well. You can see some of these games being wins, but they just couldn't simply get the job done. But up next, there is still a ton of puck left to play, and there is still a ton of time to get back on track. Up next, Penn State will travel to Washington, D.C. to play Army at the Capital One Arena for the Capital Hockey Classic. Cassie, Army, a non-conference foe. This team needs to get back on track. What do they need to do to win and feel a little bit better about this recent stretch?
Yeah, I mean, this is a must-win game for them. You know, after this Army game, they have 2 Big Ten opponents. Now, when you look at the team right now, John Seifert, he has looked really, really good. You know, he has a 91% save percentage, which is really good when they were looking to bounce back after Arseny Sergeyev got injured. Another thing that has been on the up for them has been the power play. When, you know, we had a Beat Reporter show earlier this year, we said that the power play was not looking so great. It has definitely improved, which helps all of their goal scorers, like who you're going to talk about soon, Aiden Fink, to get those much needed goals. Another thing that, you know, we talked to Guy Godowski today, and he said that they learned a lot in this first half of the season, so now they just have to apply it to get their game back together. You know, they have to be more mentally tough, which, you know, you can see that they are trying to get that. So that's definitely something that they need to do to be able to rebound.
Yeah, this iron is pretty hot. Army's coming to this game on Thursday, 5-10. If there's a time to get back on track, it's especially against the Knights. Last time they played an out-of-conference foe, it was Colgate, and they played very well, very commanding, very dominant against that Colgate team. Colgate was also coming off a series, or not really series, but 2 games against 2 opponents, Princeton and a ranked Quinnipiac team, where they won both, and they came into Pagula Ice Arena feeling really good about themselves, but Penn State took advantage and took the opportunity. But if Penn State really wants to win, and Guy Godowski stressed this enough, they have to be tough at the beginning of the game and mentally tough at the end of the game. And with the Black Knights, there's going to be a little storyline here. Guy Godowski has a son. His name is Matt Godowski. He actually plays for the Army Black Knights, and he's also the leading goal scorer. And Guy was asked about a scouting report on Army's leading goal scorer, and Godowski said, soft parenting, which I thought was pretty funny. But Penn State has a star of their own, Aiden Fink, being in the top 3, maybe top 2, tied for top 2 in the entire country when it comes to points. And of course, you mentioned John Seifert had to come in at a weird moment, you know, not really prepared to, you know, play in a game. And he's gotten the call in net, and he's come up large. But this has been a very exciting younger group to watch on the bottom end. And when you have John Seifert coming up big in the ways he has, it's been very special. And I cannot wait to see this special game in Capital One Arena. I mean, this is going to be a fantastic event for both these teams. Penn State, this is a perfect opportunity. This is going to be exciting. They can use this to be excited, get back on track. And especially Charlie Serrato, being from the D.C. area, going to games as a kid at Capital One Arena. He even got to play Mites on Ice, scored a goal, and he was very proud of it when we talked to him. But that'll be all for this little Army preview. With D.C. and a game at Wrigley Field approaching, there is plenty to look forward to this hockey season. Now, let's go back to the desk with Jack and Adriana.
Thanks, guys. Well, the semester is winding down, but there is plenty of athletic action on campus in the near future. Women's volleyball plays on Friday afternoon in Rec Hall in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament against the Marquette Golden Eagles of the Big East. The winner will face the winner of Creighton, Texas on Sunday at 8:30 p.m.
Men's basketball travels to Piscataway tomorrow to face Rutgers before coming back to the BJC on Saturday at 12:30 to take on Coppin State. And speaking of the BJC, Wrestling moved their match across campus on Sunday at 1 p.m. to do battle with the Wyoming Cowboys.
And finally, Happy Valley gets a home college football playoff game when 11th-seeded SMU comes to town on Saturday, December 1st at noon.
We know those contests will bring a lot of action. And speaking of action, let's take a look at the top 5 plays that we saw over the last 3 weeks.
Coming in at number 5, the Lady Lions keep their passing on point against the Indiana Hoosiers.
Coming in at number 4, it's a block party in Rec Hall as Izzy Stark and Maggie Mendelson stonewall the Delaware State offense.
Number 3, Puff Johnson and the Nittany Lions force a turnover on number 8 Purdue. Penn State upset the Boilermakers 81-70.
Coming in at number 2, it's a long rally in the round of 64 game between Penn State and Delaware State. But the Nittany Lions get the job done with a kill from Cameron Hanna on their way to a 3-0 win over the Hornets.
Back to the Bryce Jordan Center for our top play. Nick Curran Jr. drives and dunks to put the crowd on its feet.
Well, that will just about do it for our final episode of the semester for Dear Old State Update. For all our reporters, staff, and crew, we thank you for tuning in to Penn State Sports Night. We'll see you around.